justamente el espíritu de la convención es el amor a los juguetes, ¿no? Y pues esta plática es bastante especial y muy relacionada porque tenemos como invitado a Pixel Dan. Hello. Hey guys. Julio Martínez nos va a ayudar en la moderación.
Pues vamos a comenzar. De nuevo un aplauso para Pixel Dan que está aquí con nosotros. Mi compañera Leslie va a estar a cargo de ser la intérprete. Muchas gracias, Leslie. Un aplauso para ella también. Muy difícil. Trabajo. Muchas gracias. My first question would be, how would you define collecting? Is it a genre, like a narrative that the collector says something with the thing he is or she is collecting? Is it just a hobby? Is it a sensibility of the eye? How would you describe collecting in general?
I think collecting usually starts because you have some sort of nostalgic feeling for it, right? Usually it's something that you grew up with as a kid and you remember those happy moments of your childhood playing with these toys and how special they were to you. So that kind of sparks this desire and this interest to want to pick up some of those toys maybe you had as a kid. Or maybe you see a new movie, a superhero movie, and it's a superhero you always loved as a kid, and suddenly you want to buy the toys based off of it. I think it's kind of that feeling of kind of childhood joy, the nostalgic feeling that really sparks the interest and kind of drives collecting all across the board. And maybe you're just buying the few things that you had as a kid that makes you happy, or maybe it opens like a whole new world for you, and suddenly maybe you wanted to get a couple He-Man figures you had as a kid, but along the way you remembered how cool Transformers were, or Ninja Turtles, or G.I. Joe, and then suddenly you start discovering all these other toys that are out there, and it just kind of branches off. But I think nostalgia is always the biggest driving force for it.
Now, YouTube seems to be at the center of a new form of, a new way of collecting. What would be the importance of YouTube? I know you are strong in all of the social media, but what's the importance of YouTube? YouTube seems to be at the center of a new toy collecting culture.
Absolutely. So I started on YouTube 10 years ago now, which is amazing. And when I first started, there wasn't really a lot of toy content out there, so it was kind of new frontier, you know? And we've gotten to a point now where so many of us are on there talking about these toys, we're sharing our passions, and it's allowing people to discover toys that they may not have known existed before, or rekindle their love for stuff they had as a kid. And I think it's very important because it kind of opens up your eyes to this whole world that you may not have known existed before. And maybe that's just discovering toys that were out when you were a kid that you missed. Or maybe doing stuff where like you're suddenly learning how deep some of these toy lines go with crazy paint variations or different foreign variants that you never knew existed until the internet came along and you started talking to toy fans all over the world, showing you all these different toys that came out in their countries when they were young, and it allows you to really kind of see how big this, not only like the toy industry is and the hobby is, but like this community in general is so big, and it's allowed a lot of people to connect and make friends across borders and across the world and kind of trade and just really get to see how much cool stuff is out there.
You were recently at the San Diego Comic-Con.
Yes.
Was there any line or piece among all the stuff you got to see there that really caught your eye, something that you thought was special?
Ooh, so that's always a hard question. I'm a pretty big fan of what NECA Toys does these days, specifically because they've been doing an amazing job with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is one of my favorite properties. It's right there with Masters of the Universe as like my two tops. So they've done some pretty incredible stuff with that. Plus they do the amazing Aliens and Predator and a lot of great movie stuff. But just They displayed some new Ninja Turtle stuff that I'm really excited about, Leatherhead and Slash specifically, but they also announced that there was a whole bunch of new Turtles toys coming, and I'm just really excited about that, because more Ninja Turtles, especially based on the old stuff that I grew up with, is A-okay in my book. I'm really excited about that. So that was probably my personal favorite thing to see there, but gosh, there is so much at Comic-Con that I feel like it's hard to see it all, because there's so much going on.
Now, what would you say makes Masters of the Universe so special? Is it the colors? Is it the designs? Is it the muscles? Is it the story? Is it the comic book? Is it the cartoon? Is it the fact that they both exist and somehow contradict each other? Why is it so special?
You know, I think it's a little bit of everything you just said, because Masters of the Universe has got so many different forms of media, and they're all slightly different. So you have the original cartoon from Filmation, you have the mini comics that came with the toys, you have the toys, you have the actual like DC comics and the Star comics, and it's almost like they all kind of tell their own versions of the stories, and they all have their own fans. But at the end of the day, we're all Masters of the Universe fans, and it's a really cool community to be a part of. There's so many amazing, colorful characters, especially the bad guys. I'm a huge Skeletor fan. He's always my Skeletor fan right there. But I love his weirdo band of evil warriors and how bizarre they look. I love everything about, I still remember being a kid and watching the cartoon, and every single time Prince Adam transformed into He-Man, that was a special moment. My mom still likes to tell stories about how I used to run around the house with my plastic sword and yell, "I have the power!" She brings it up all the time. She thinks it's so cool that I do this now. So yeah, I think it's Masters of the Universe has a way to appeal to everybody, I think. No matter if you prefer the lightheartedness of the cartoon or the more swords and sorcery of those mini comics. It's sort of like a little bit, I got science fiction in there. You have a little bit of everything all rolled up into this really fun package.
Now, is Star Wars the golden standard of toy collecting?
Ooh, probably. Star Wars is so big, right? Everybody knows Star Wars. Most everybody loves Star Wars. And it's funny because I have always kind of referred to Star Wars as being the gateway drug to collecting. Because even though I grew up with He-Man and Ninja Turtles and all that, of course, eventually I discovered Star Wars growing up, and it became a huge fascination for me with those movies. And I think a lot of us go through that period between kids and collectors where we don't really buy toys anymore because we're too old for toys now, right? So the thing that really turned me into a toy collector was when I started buying the Star Wars Power of the Force figures in the 90s. Because I was a huge fan of the original trilogy at that point. I was right at that age where it was just like Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars, like that was all I thought about. So when those figures first, I walked into the toy aisle and I saw these new Star Wars toys hanging there, it's like it just instantly made me a toy collector because I was like, well, I have to have these. And then I was buying all of those up, and it was, for a while there, it was just Star Wars toys that I was collecting. But that's what suddenly sparked that nostalgia I was talking about, where I was like, I kind of miss my He-Man toys. So I started looking up on early days of eBay, looking for He-Man toys, and started bringing it all back. and it opened the floodgates, and next thing you know, I'm collecting everything.
What is the most fun thing about the Ninja Turtles?
Oh my gosh. The Ninja Turtles pretty much are like fun all wrapped up, right? Those guys are exciting. I mean, for them it's all about pizza and being a ninja. I mean, everybody wants to be a ninja, right? The Ninja Turtles came out right as Masters of the Universe was ending. So it was like a natural transition for me, right? And then Turtles Fever kind of flooded the world in the 90s there. You know, they started in the late 80s, but the 90s, it was just like Ninja Turtles was everywhere. So it was so easy to get into. But when you're a kid, it's so easy to gravitate to it, right? Because they're just so fun, and they're all about partying and having a good time and eating pizza and playing video games, and being a ninja and beating up bad guys. I mean, come on, that is just so much fun. So yeah, and they've kind of got the same thing going on with the very cool-looking bad guys with the mutants. You know, the Op and Rocksteady are so cool. The Foot Ninjas are very, very cool looking too, but you know, you get all the weird mutants, the fun designs, the colors, especially in the cartoon, and the toys were so colorful. You know, the Ninja Turtles kind of became the gold standard of toys in the 90s because they were so popular that all the other toy companies were trying to mimic the style of Ninja Turtles with their toy lines. We started getting all those other things like, you know, like the Stone Protectors, or the Samurai Pizza Cats, or like the SWAT Cats, and you got all these things that were trying to be Ninja Turtles because it just was such a popular thing, and it was so easy to latch onto because they were so cool looking.
Now, back in the 90s, there was a collecting bubble in the American comic book industry. It somehow made the industry collapse because there was speculation and prices were not real. Are we at risk of something like that happening soon in certain toy lines or collecting subcultures like the bootleg collecting? Mm-hmm. Are we at risk right now of a collecting bubble like the one in the comic books in the 90s?
I think it's always possible. I think it's so popular right now, right? We're kind of at like an all-time high for the amount of people who are toy collectors or going to comic conventions. Like there's so many conventions now. And you see a lot of popular stuff. Like I think the easy one to bring up is the Funko Pops, right? Those are everywhere, and there's so many of them. And I know that that's what's so appealing about those is because no matter what you're a fan of, there's probably a Funko Pop for it, so it's easy to collect those. And they've been around for a long time, but you do have to wonder if at some point that bubble is going to burst and suddenly people are going to lose interest in those. And there's so many of them out there that they're probably not going to retain value. And that's kind of the big thing with a lot of us now as toy collectors, with the toys that come out now probably aren't going to be worth as much down the road, the same way that the stuff from the 70s and 80s is worth now. Because back then, they were bought for kids to play with. I mean, there was probably a few collectors, but not like it is today. So it's harder to find the stuff from the 70s and 80s, which is what makes it a little more expensive to buy now. Starting with probably the mid-90s, with all of the McFarlane stuff that was out there, all of the Toy Biz stuff that was out there that flooded the markets, I think that's where we see like the cutoff, where that stuff doesn't really hold the value that the old stuff did. And I think it's I feel like it's the same today. The stuff that we're all buying now and collecting, some of it might hold value, but I don't think it's all going to hold value. Because who knows, maybe the generation after us may not even be toy collectors. You know, they may not care the same way that we do, so they may not even have a want for this stuff. But I think anytime something gets at a certain size, whether it's toy collecting or anything, comic books, when you get to a certain size, there's going to be a breaking point where it has to kind of stop and reset and then start growing again. So I think it is bound to happen. Yeah.
It's time for our questions from the audience. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Si quieren, hacemos una fila para que sea mucho más sencillo y ordenado. Les paso este micrófono, compañeros. Tienen ya otro por allá. Si quieren, hacemos aquí una fila. Quien quiera pasar a preguntar, nada más pónganse. Y estamos súper sencillo. Si van a hacer su pregunta y necesitan traducción, solo denos un segundito para que Leslie se encargue de despacharla. Muchas gracias a todos.
I have some questions. Sure, maybe a lot, but how do you create your name Pixel Dan? Where that came from?
It's a good question.
Another one, what do you think about monkey collectors? That they collect, pop collectors that they don't open the toys. They just buy them and think about the future to sell them. They are not collectors. So what do you think about them? Another one is maybe, well, I forgot.
That's okay, I'll answer your first two questions. Okay, so the name Pixel Dan originates from way back when I started my channel 10 years ago. So the reason I decided to start doing videos on YouTube at the time was because I had started watching a lot of video game reviewers on YouTube. It was kind of a brand new thing. Specifically like the Angry Video Game Nerd, he's easy to cite as an inspirational source because I found him like 10 years ago on YouTube and started watching it. I thought it was very entertaining. He led me to watching other stuff, and I just felt like I wanted to do something, that I could do something. So I wanted to do something I felt a little more passionate about, which is toy collecting. But to kind of tie it to that popularity wave of the video game stuff, I started by doing a series of videos that were specifically about toys that were based on video game characters. And I called the series From Pixels to Plastic. I put out a couple episodes of that, and it kind of caught attention, and I just kind of started being referred to as Pixel Dan because my show was From Pixels to Plastic. And I thought it was very catchy and a good way to brand myself. So Pixel Dan became my name, and that's just kind of the way it went from there. So that's where I got my name. As far as like the Funko Pop collectors, you know, oh, Mint on Card collectors. Okay, so your whole question is they're just buying it because it's worth money and eventually they're hoping to cash in on that. So I don't like to tell anybody that there's a wrong way to collect. Okay, so if you're a Mint on Card guy, that's totally cool. But loose collecting is totally fine too, and I don't think the Mint on Card people should be getting mad at the loose people, or you know what I mean. But I will say that for me, I don't collect for value. I collect for the joy I get from the stuff. That is far more important to me. So if I feel like I want to open a toy because it's going to bring me joy, I bought the toy, and I'm going to open the toy, and I'm going to have fun with it. So I know some people collect because they're hoping to make a bunch of money off of it one day, and I don't want to say that they shouldn't be doing that or that they can't do that, but I collect because I enjoy it, and I like it, and it makes me happy. So.
Thank you for listening.
Of course.
Thank you for letting me power of time.
I like it.
The question is, what do you think about this new series, Thundercats?
Oh, I knew that this question was going to come. So, like, you're talking about the new, like, the She-Ra cartoon, the Thundercats cartoon, the Ninja Turtles cartoon, all of these reboots that are happening. So, my opinion on these is that they're made for a new generation of kids. And they may not be something that I end up liking. I don't know yet. I'm going to give them all a chance. I have watched the first episode of Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I can tell that it's made for a younger audience. And it's definitely not my favorite version of the Turtles that I've seen. I didn't hate it, but I'm not in love with it yet. But you know what? I watched it with my 4-year-old, and he loved it. At the end of the day, that's all I care about, right? And I think that's very important sometimes for us to kind of take a step back and realize that it's not a bad thing when these shows are being rebooted specifically to target a younger audience, because bringing new people into the brands that we love and grew up with and introducing them to these brands is only a positive thing for all of us at the end. Because if these shows are successful with a new generation of kids, then with the brand being a success as a whole, that's only going to bring us more cool toys from NECA. You know, like they'll still be able to give us cool Ninja Turtles toys for the collector because the brand as a whole is being successful right now, so they're going to want to license that stuff out. And the same could probably be said for maybe this new Thundercats cartoon, as weird as it looks. I don't know if I'm going to like it, I'll be perfectly honest. It doesn't look like something I would enjoy personally. But if kids like it, maybe Warner Brothers will finally say, hey, the Thundercats brand is alive, it's successful, maybe we'll try that Thundercats Classics thing again and make some adult collector figures. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, we gotta let the kids have the things that are for the kids, and hopefully we can reap the benefits of the success of the brands, right? So, and She-Ra? Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with this. I've only seen like the pictures that they've revealed so far. They've made some interesting design choices, I think, with some of the characters. Like Catra is like a real cat person now. It's interesting. You know, I don't think the animation looks too bad. Well, I haven't seen it in motion yet, but I think it looks like colorful and pretty. I really like what DreamWorks did with Voltron. I don't know if this is going to be quite up to those standards, but I don't know. We'll give it a chance. I think it's important too. We're in an age right now of like the whole girl power thing too. So I think it's the perfect time to bring She-Ra back for girls, for young girls, or whoever wants to watch it. It doesn't matter. So I'm interested to see how it plays out. And who knows? Maybe this will be good for the He-Man and She-Ra brand. You know, that's one thing about He-Man, right? We've had all these toys, but we haven't had any media for a long time. And if they finally get themselves a successful new form of media for She-Ra, maybe we'll start getting some more push for He-Man and stuff. So, we'll see what happens.
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
There are some toys that you have when you are a kid that you consider today like a guilty pleasure, like the new adventures of He-Man, also Robin Hood from Ten, or some toys that you loved when you was a kid, but today's standards you look back and say, this wasn't so great.
You know what? I don't know if I don't know. I'm pretty good at looking at the toys for what they are and understanding that they came from a different era. And usually my nostalgia tells my brain that it's okay that the toy may not be up to the standards of today. But even though they're doing some amazing stuff with toys now, with all the articulation and the amazing details and stuff like that, I always find myself more attracted to those more basic toys that we grew up with. To be perfectly honest, I think that's that nostalgic thing again, right? It's the nostalgia. So even though I love Marvel Legends, for example, they're amazing toys, right? They're beautiful, especially now that they've got the real scan faces, the articulation is nice. But even though I love those, I am always going to love my old Toy Biz Wolverine with the pop-out claws. You know? So, I just like toys.
Por desgracia se nos ha terminado el tiempo, damas y caballeros. Muchas gracias a todos por venir. Vamos a despedirnos de Pixelback con un fuerte aplauso.
Thank you all so much. I love Mexico. I'm having so much fun here. You're all wonderful. Never grow up, right? Thank you guys very much.
Muchas gracias.